doing that for 6 months, and I was just burnt out, and I was getting ready to leave. And then I found out that they were going to lay me off. And so then I was like, fuck it. Like, this is perfect. Like, all right, I'm going to get unemployment. Like, I'm going to get like a severance. And like, I got money saved. So I'm just going to go travel. So then like, I just renewed my passport, waited for that to come in. And then, yeah, once they let me go, I was like, cool, I'm out. That's pretty much it. Like, I had a homie's wedding right before. So like, I went to Hawaii for like a week and then came back and then split. And so then I started my trip in Mexico City. And so I went through Mexico, part of South America, and then Europe, and then, back to the US. So in total, I hit a dozen countries. Like, I traveled through 15, and I was on the road for a little over 4 months.
Damn, we were just um, talking to someone else who recently that we're going to do a podcast with that has been to 35 plus countries over the span of like 15 years. But you hit how many countries in that short of a period of time? 15?
15.
That's amazing.
Damn, 4 months?
Yeah. Like, I would have traveled longer, but obviously I never like gone backpacking, and then just meeting people and like chatting with people and like hostels and shit, and like learning how they do it. Like, I met a bunch of people that they're like, oh yeah, this is like my third, fourth time doing this. And pretty much all of them, like all of like the seasoned backpackers, they do the same thing, which is they just pick a country, they just go there, and then they just go from there. And so like, I fucked up when I was doing mine, is I was like, all right, I want to hit all these places. So like, I booked flights to all those countries. So then I was like, shit, like Mexico City was a blast. Like, I've been there twice now, and like, I keep going back just because it's a dope place. Like, I really like it. But like, from there, like, I had prearranged trips in like Colombia and Ecuador and Peru. So I was in Bogota for 3 nights, and like, I had a blast there. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, I paid for a flight, and I was like, well, like shit, like I paid like $300 for like a flight. So like, I had to go, kind of situation. And so like, now like, I know it's like, okay, like I just go to one place and then just figure it out from there. Like, that's what I did. Cause I went to Australia before I moved out here. Like, that's what I did out there. I just went to Sydney and then figured out what other places I wanted to go to while I was there for 2 weeks, and then just figured it out.
Dude, so how can you do that though, Benny? What is it, man? What do you think that is inside you and people like you that just have this urge to travel, because people want to do this kind of stuff, but a lot of people are just scared, I guess, or afraid to do something like that. I mean, what is it do you think that just makes you want to do something like that?
Honestly, looking back on, like, as a kid, I always wanted to travel, and I always wanted to be a marine biologist because I always liked watching like the Discovery Channel, like documentaries on like sharks and everything.
Shark Week.
And so like, I always thought, I was like, oh, like I really dug the ocean, and really like I just liked all the places they were at, because like, they would be like in Indonesia and like, the Philippines or whatever country they would be in, like studying like, the fish or whatever. And I just always dug that. And from there, just learning about other places, and just kind of seeing how people go about their way of life. Because that's also the one of the conversations I always had with other travelers that I met, especially like Australians and Europeans, was like the American way of life, how people view like things in the US, which is always like, oh yeah, like get a job, like work forever, retire, like buy a house, like do all this shit. And then like, once you're like 50 or 60 and retire, then go travel. And it's like, fuck that. Like, like, you may like have like a back like breaking job where like, your knees are all fucked up and you can't walk that far. So it's like, okay, like you spent your whole life like putting the shit you wanted to do off, and then now you can't do it. And so yeah, like a lot of the people, like we all kind of said the same things. It was just like, oh, like I had a bullshit job, and so it's like, fuck this, like I'm just gonna go travel. And yeah, it's like, just do it while you can, because life isn't certain with how things happen. So it's like, well, like if you have the financial means to do it, do it. And then even then too, like I always had this misconception that traveling is expensive, and it's not. Like, it's all about how you do it, really. And honestly, the most expensive thing really is just getting to one place. Like, that's like where your biggest expense comes from. And then it all just depends on where you go. So for me, like a flight out to Mexico City from the Bay Area, depending on when you buy it, like a round trip ticket, like the most expensive I've seen is like $400, but you can get it for like $225, like at the cheapest. So if like I was gonna go like backpacking through Mexico, I would buy a one-way ticket, so that would be like $100. And then, from there, then like you're chilling at hostels, and like a hostel is anywhere from, like the most expensive like I've paid was in Europe, and that was like $40. But like Mexico and South America, like you pay like $6-7 a night. So, you can stay in a place for like 2 weeks and it's only like $30 or $40.
And what's that like? What's a hostel like?
Um, basically what you need is a bed and like places to chill. Like, that's I mean, because it's basically it's a place for like people of the same kind of mindset to go hang out, really. Like it, because that's the thing too, is like a lot of the like conversations I had with people about traveling is that that's the thing too, when you talk to people, especially like from the States, when you ask them about where they went, they're like, oh yeah, like the hotel was so great, or like the resort was great. It's like, well, you didn't fucking go anywhere. You just stayed in this little space in a foreign country for a week. That's not traveling. Like, like you just wasted a bunch of fucking money on not seeing anything. And I mean, really, like that's kind of what it really boils down to, is like what you want and need. And so for me, it's like, well, like, I don't need much. I just need a bed and like a shower, because pretty much like the rest of the day, like when you're traveling, like you're out screwing around checking shit out. As long as like I have a place to sleep and shower, like I don't need anything else.
Well, that's another reason why to travel when you can, as opposed to wait to the typical American retirement age and then say you're going to travel. Because one, you're probably not. Two, is you're going to be walking around all day. At what age? And also, true traveling is different from the resorts. And to go to the hostels and to experience that, yes, 9% chance you might get murdered. Nah, probably not. Probably more like 2. But
yeah, get taken and abducted and sold into sex slavery.
But like, I don't know if you ever, but like, it's the best way to travel, because especially if you're traveling alone. So if you're young, I say if you're from Lindsay and you're like early 20s, hell, even in your late teens, like just go travel. Even your 30s, 40s, whatever, go. But when you're young and you could do the hostels, like with just a hostel, sometimes just it could be like I said, one that was $5 a night, and it's just bunk beds down, like 16 beds, and there's people fucking and there's people partying, and I've been in one where there's a bunch of older ladies. It's a trip. So but I think it's one of the funnest, weirdest experiences I've ever had.
That experience, like I guess the worst place I stayed in was when I was in Peru, and like it was just like a janky, like dingy ass like hostel, and I was just there for a night. And because like usually it's just kind of like bare minimum, but like this place was just hella fucking like just dirty, and I was just like, oh shit. I was all right, whatever. Like so, like that place, like I slept on my clothes because I didn't want to like sleep on the bed. But like outside of that, like I didn't have like any problems at all. Like it's all the same thing, really. Like it's just a bunch of people that are traveling, and like everybody's doing their own thing, and then obviously like there's like the lounge areas, so like you can just chat with like random people and like find out where they're from and like ask what they've done. Is you can hear from other people like, oh, like that place is like really shitty, like it's not that great. Like you should go over here, like we were wandering around, like we found this like dope restaurant, or this like cool like museum and shit like that. And so really just interacting with people from all over the world, that are there at the hostel, but then also too like in like the cities, because then you're meeting with the locals, because you're not in like the tourist place. Well, I mean, you might be staying there, but then obviously you're not looking for like that, like fisherman's wharf experience, where like what everybody does when they go to the city. It's like you want to like actually meet with like the locals and like do what they do.
Yeah, hang out with a crackhead if you're in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real